following program is paid for by Barbara Arnwine.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Urban One Incorporated, Radio One, or any of its subsidiary companies.
It's time now for Igniting Change, a weekly provocative and empowering program where you, the listener, can ignite change. Now here's your host, Barbara Arnwine.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Igniting Change. Oh, do we have a good show for you today, and do we have a lot to talk about? Oh, this has been that last week was what I call sizzling. It was on fire. There was so much going on, and our gratitude to all the people in the U.S. who stood up. But we're going to talk about that more during the show. Let me bring up my amazing, bold, just powerful. I can't even begin to talk about his creativity and all of his commitment, but he is the chair of the board of the Transformative Justice Coalition. I'm talking about attorney Daryl D. Jones. Hey, Daryl.
Hey, Barbara, it must be Tuesday. It must be noon Eastern Standard Time because we're talking about igniting change. Barbara, my goodness, was change not ignited last week? My goodness, October 18th will go down as a day of change. There were, 7 million people that took to the streets. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, Barbara, and I tell you, I have never seen so many clowns, so many jokers. I saw pink elephants and what is that thing called? Unicorns. Oh, my goodness.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And let me bring on our first guest who can help us go into this because he's on a tight schedule, and we are so respectful of his genius. He is one of the nation's top organizers. He is one of the nation's top thinkers. He is one of the nation's top oralists. He is amazing. He is the founder of the Black Voters Matters Fund. He is also a, let's just call it, he may not have the title Reverend, but is he really a preacher? And it's beyond street preaching. He's got the soul of the conscience of our country residing within him. I'm talking about our dear brother, Cliff Albright. Hey, Cliff.
Hey, Barbara. Hey, Daryl. How are y'all doing?
Oh, we are so good. We are so grateful to you and for all the good work that you do every single day. Thank you for taking the time to be on our show. And I know Daryl was down there in Atlanta this last Saturday. And I know he has something to say about some Atlanta. Daryl, what you were talking about the inflatables, you're talking about the pink dragons, and you're talking about the unicorns, you're talking about all the Trump images, the no kings, right, Daryl?
Oh, absolutely, Barbara. It was an incredible and impressive showing of people that got out into the streets to show the power of the people and their dissatisfaction with the direction that the country is going in, and their willingness to stand up and to take back the democracy principles for which this country is supposed to stand. So there were some 25,000 people that were in the streets. It was an incredible showing.
Love it. And Cliff, we had already set the temperature up. We had already turned the heat on. Because that Wednesday, we were out in front of the Supreme Court, and we were saying that we demand justice from a court that seems to be lacking in understanding what that word is or unwilling to provide it when it comes to people of color. But I wanted to, ask you to tell people about what Black Voters Matters did. It was just so amazing what you did at the Supreme Court, because we had already, like I said, before people got to know Kings, we turned it up at the court. Tell people about why did Black Voters Matter invest so much in providing buses to bring voters to attend the Supreme Court rally?
Yeah, we brought close to 300 people from southern states, mainly in buses. We had 6 buses that came from 8 states. And then we had another state that, was so far away, the Texas folk, we just had to fly them in because they would have been for 2 days. But we had 300 people coming from these southern states, and that's all the way from Texas, all the way across the South, from Texas to Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, both Carolinas, right? And the reason that, and of all ages. I mean, the youngest I think was like 15 years old. We had a bunch of college students, including some that you all there at Transformative Justice Coalition had referred over, right? But we had all ages from 50 to, I think the highest might have been like 75 or 77.
Wow.
And the reason that we did that was because it was such a momentous case. We felt it was important not just that black folks in general be visible, but that particularly black folks from the South be visible. Because at the end of the day, most of the states that are going to be directly impacted are in the South. Not only in the South, because we know that the Voting Rights Act covers, some other jurisdictions and a few other states, but mainly when we look at the 19 seats that would be immediately at risk. Those are 19 congressional seats that are in red states that have already demonstrated that they're looking to gerrymander us out of existence. Like, most of those are in the South. So we wanted to bring some folks there. We were able to bring 300. And when I tell you, they all made their presence felt all throughout that rally.
And people, listen. If you weren't there, and I'm so glad so many hundreds of you were there, and if you weren't watching on the live stream, what you missed was every time one of those Black Voter Matter buses would roll up and unload, their cohorts would march into the rally, chanting, and making sure that everybody knew that they were there and that black votes matter. Oh, my God, it was just beautiful. It was unlike anything I've ever seen at any Supreme Court rally before. Daryl, why were we out there? Why don't we tell people about this Callais case? Because, really quickly, because Cliff has mentioned the impact of what this decision could result in less African-American congressional members. But be clear, less Latino, less Asian, less Native American. This is striking at the heart of our democracy. Daryl, tell people why we were out there at that courthouse.
Absolutely, Barbara. The Callais case, as they call it, Louisiana versus Callais, it came about as a result of redistricting that was should have been happening in Louisiana. There were so many African American black folk, if you will, that moved into Louisiana that it merited a second congressional district to be created in accordance with the Voting Rights Act of '65. But the state legislature in Louisiana wasn't going to have it. They weren't going to do it. They were not going to create this second congressional district. Well, ultimately, there was a suit that was filed. As a result of the suit that was filed, it was shown that Press Robinson, who was the one of the people that was impacted and filed the suit, it was shown that the black folks in Louisiana probably were going to be successful as calling this a violation of the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And so, the legislature at that point then realized that the court was going to go ahead and create the second legislative district, congressional district on their own. And so the court wanted to protect, I assume, Representative Steve Scalise as well as as well as the president of as well as the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And so they created the second congressional district. As a result of that, there were 6 white folks down in Louisiana said not so fast and filed suit saying that they were being discriminated against, in essence, of sort of a reverse discrimination. And so this is what the court was trying to decide. The Supreme Court then both matters went up to the Supreme Court where they had to make the decision, and we heard argument on Wednesday the 15th with regards to whether or not Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act really will continue to be enforced the way that it has since 1965, or will it have to yield some way? And should there be something under the 14th or 15th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause that should impact that? So that's a large part of the decision that's being made. Ultimately, the decision that will be made by the Supreme Court, and we're still waiting on that decision to come down, it's going to impact and has potential to impact how lines are drawn in terms of do we have to take into consideration, must say, is it lawful to take into consideration race and drawing these redistricting lines? And that, Barbara, will impact the power that, as Cliff so brilliantly laid out, immediately is going to impact at least 19 members of the Congressional Black Caucus and potentially even more. And it's going to flow down to local races with regards to gerrymandering and setting up the districts there as well for both the state and local governments, Barbara.
Yes, and Cliff, you were telling us about these amazing people who rode on those buses. I couldn't believe how joyous they were. One thing that Black Voters Matters has done and TJC has done to change the face of this movement right now is we insist on protesting with joy. Why is that, Cliff? What's the spiritual basis for our showing up and protesting and partying as we protest, and and hugging and loving on each other as we protest? Tell people why that has become part of the norm that we are establishing throughout this country.
Yeah, I mean, I think we think it's important because movement requires a couple of things. One, it requires that as you're in movement, as you're going through struggles, that you're able to stay focused and centered on like what's really important, like what our North Star is, right? And at the end of the day, I think that in this work, our North Star is really based on love. It's based on love of our community. It's based on love of our families. And so, it's important that we keep that not just as an end result, not just as a destination, right? But also as like a mechanism that even helps us to get there. And so we try to center love. We try to center joy. And at the end of the day, this work isn't even sustainable if we don't center love and joy, if we don't involve culture in our work. Like nobody wants to be involved in a movement where you don't even have a moment for some culture, a moment for laughter. Even in the slave community, our people, even in that oppressive situation, right, our people always found a way to make space for culture and to make space for joy. People may listen and say, oh, my God, that sounds crazy. But some of our traditions came out of that slave community, right? We found time to create traditions like jumping the broom. We found time to have some of our musical traditions, to even while we're in the field, singing the spirituals, which were not just a source of culture, but were also a source of resistance, right? And so, you fast forward to the civil rights movement, and what mass meeting would we have that didn't involve some level of singing, some freedom songs, right? And so we've always had that in our movements, and I think that it's important that we continue that into today's movement, maybe even now more so than ever.
And you also put the truth to a lie that people love to tell. They love to talk about our young people not caring. But those buses were loaded with young people, and they were on fire. Talk to us about, all these amazing young folks who said, I got to be in D.C. on Wednesday. On a Wednesday, I got to be in D.C. I'm going to get on a bus and ride for 20 hours alongside, people of all generations, but I am going to have my young self out there. What did that mean to you? Because it meant a lot. People kept saying to me during the rally, look at the young people, look at the young people. What did it mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it meant a lot to me as well. And shout out to our HBCUs, because most of those students, I think,
All right now.
out of the 300, I think 85 of them were actually HBCU students.
That's awesome.
And so I mean that means a lot to us. We pride ourselves on being an intergenerational organization. I know that's a big part of what you all do with TJC as well, because we can't have an intergenerational movement if we don't have intergenerational organizations. And so seeing those young folks out there meant a lot, and it really says something about, like you said, like their desire to be involved in this movement, their desire to see change, like their desire, their knowledge and understanding of how important the Voting Rights Act is. Like, people are always quick to say, as you pointed out, that, these students, these young people, they don't recognize the importance of history. They don't know that somebody, died or bled for this right to vote. Well, these students, they know that, right? And they're demonstrating it, with their actions and with their passion. And I think the main thing is that if we want students to be involved, we got to find ways for them to demonstrate their leadership. We got to find ways for them to be meaningfully involved in activities like this and historical moments like this. And so, and again, we, just like TJC, we believe that, we can't just tell students that they're the future. We got to let them know that they are the now. Like, we can't just tell them that we want their labor. We need them to go out and give out some flyers for us, because we're too old and tired to give out the flyers on our own, right? We can't just use them for our labor, but we got to use them for their vision and for their strategies and for their tactics. And when you involve them that way, and when you invest in their leadership, right? When you actually put your money where your mouth is and say, we're going to put some funds up to get you to D.C., or put some funds up for you to carry out this program that you want to see carried out on your campus. When we do that, they respond. And not only do they respond, but then they respond and they stay engaged, and they hope to expand the tent. It's absolutely critical for this movement that we continue to do that.
That's so beautiful. And Daryl, Cliff, can we give a shout out to, talking about HBCUs, a shout out to the students of FAMU? Candace Owen said she was going to bring her turning point nonsense to the campus, her black nonsense to the campus, and the student said, I don't think so. And she ended up, quote, canceling. Talking about they might reschedule, and the students were what? They said it was a victory for the culture, is what they were shouting. I mean, come on. This is what we got to celebrate, when our folks rise up and do the right thing to protect our history, our culture. I'm just so proud of those students at FAMU. Thank you for standing up. Daryl.
And not just FAMU. I think Tennessee State, I think did the same thing. I think there are a couple other campuses where those Lexit or whatever they are, with those MAGA, Black MAGA, Negro MAGA, where they wound up having to turn around and cancel their plans. So, shout out to all of them.
Yeah.
But, Cliff, that's just the culture of the HBCU, though. The HBCU student is, again, I went to an HBCU. The HBCU experience is different, because the HBCU experience, the schools were founded on fighting back, right? They were founded. That was the very impetus of the beginning of most of the HBCUs. So, it was odd to me that Candace wanted to go to an HBCU, right, to try to influence. I just found all of that amazing. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Cliff, because I wanted to transition a little bit over to this No Kings thing and what we see happening and not happening from the African American community. And I know that you and Barbara were in D.C. I was in Atlanta, as you know. We switched places. You went to D.C. I went to Georgia. And in Atlanta, the largest one, which is where I was, there were maybe 10% of the 25,000 people were African American, which I expected to see a much greater volume given the population, black population that's in Atlanta. What do you think is going on? Now, is there something going on where we don't see the African Americans participating in these types of events?
Yeah, I think you got a couple of things going on, right? I think on the one hand, you've got folks who maybe want to be involved, black folks that want to be involved, right, but have some very legitimate concerns around safety, right? We know that once we show up to these rallies, that all of a sudden the tone tends to change, right? And not the tone from us, right, but just the response from law enforcement. That as long as it's 95% white, they're just standing around on the sidelines watching and whatever, right? But soon, let a certain number of black folks get there, and all of a sudden their positioning tends to change, because what we know is that our mere presence is often viewed as being a threat, right, by law enforcement. So some of it is that people want to be involved in these things, but that they have legitimate concerns around safety. Some of it is that you've got folks that have a critique of these events as not necessarily focusing enough on our issues, right? Specifically, explicitly, like not enough focus on racial justice. That we're out there talking about no kings, but are we talking specifically about the 300,000 black women that have lost their jobs? Are we talking more explicitly about how it's mainly our neighborhoods that have been overrun with National Guard and these ICE agents and all of that? Are we talking about the specific things that are in fact? Are we talking about the erasure or the attempted erasure of Black history? And so, I pointed out in my remarks that even the No Kings expression, the No Kings label, is in some ways a little problematic, and I want to be clear. I'm a supportive of the movement, right? But I can see some people saying it's a little problematic because its origins comes from what? From 1776, when this country was going around and the patriots, so-called patriots, were saying no kings, no kings. But as they were saying it, 1/4 of this country's population was enslaved, right? And so there was a tone deafness to this call for no kings. There was a color blindness, at best color blindness, associated. And so there are some people that say that today it feels the same way, that there's a focus on, well, we want to get rid of the king, but like, what about some of the racial injustices that existed even before this petty, small, wannabe dictator was on the scene? Like, we're not trying to go back to that. And if we don't have in these discussions or in these rallies or in these plans or in some of these follow-up actions that people are talking about, whether it be boycotts or general strikes, if there's no recognition of the racial equity issues, then you're going to continue to have people feeling left out. Right now, I'm saying that feeling is out there, but I'm also saying that we have got to do our part to more directly address it. Because if I'm not there, if I'm not speaking, if Barbara's not there, if you're not there, if people like my good sister Ashley Henderson, who's been involved, formerly co-executive director of the Highlander Center, if we're not there, then who's going to be there to push these issues, right? And if we're not showing up as participants at these rallies, then who's going to be there to change the direction of some of these discussions? So it's got to be a kind of a give and take, right, where we need the organizers of No Kings to do their part to be inclusive, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to find a way to be involved in this movement, because we can't do it on our own, right? We can't do it on our own, but guess what? They can't do it without us. And so we've got to find a way to bring it all together.
Yes, and let's talk a minute about that. The reason why people say, why are y'all out in the streets? Why is there no kings? Why do you guys rally? Why do you show up at the court? Folks, it's so important to make sure that your voices are heard and that people know there's opposition. You can't just rely on, knowing what you feel inside of you. People got to know that there is a whole movement of opposition. So what has happened? The reason why no kings, the reason why hands off, the reason why 50-51 and Indivisible and everybody else, get folks out in the street, is because we have found and studied prior democracies like the United States that are endangered. And what we have found out is that if the democracy, if there's no opposition to the fascist forces, you know what I mean, the dictator, wannabe dictator forces in the country, if there's no active opposition, then the dictators tend to win. But they lose whenever 3.5%, they lose most of the time, when 3.5% of the people make their voices heard. What does that mean for us in the United States? In the U.S., we have 330 million people. If you look at the adult population, 275, I believe, if you look at the adult population and you extrapolate from it, to get to 3.5%, you need at least 10 plus million people in those streets. We had 7 million in the streets on Saturday. That's getting there. That's compared to 5 million in June. So the question that I always say is that no movement for democracy in the U.S. is valid if it doesn't have a racial justice component. And what we're talking about right now is how do you make sure that people out in those streets talking about Medicaid, veterans, talking about all these critical issues, no ICE, etc., as Nene said from Free D.C., the oppression of ICE, we've been living with it as Black communities with the way that most police departments treat us. So the question is, if you don't get to the racial justice aspects, Cliff, are we just playing around the margins?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. You're doing two things if we don't have more discussion around these issues. One is just saying you can't get to that critical mass that you need in order to create that change, because that critical mass, that 3.5%, isn't even just based on who's coming to a rally. That's a start, and it's a good start, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't get people to do like a general strike if you can't get them to a rally. Getting to that 3.5 at the rally is critical. I'd say we even need to get to 4% or 5% or 6%, because again, some of the people that go to the rallies, they're not going to be ready to move up the ladder of engagement and do something a little bit more disruptive, right? So you can't. Bottom line is, if we don't consider racial equity, then we can't get to those numbers. But the other part of that is that we also can't create the society that we need to create in order to keep us from getting right back to this spot that we're in. Because until we deal with those issues, until we deal with what Du Bois said was going to be the problem, the core problem of the 20th century, and here we are in the 21st century, and it's still the core problem, right? If we don't deal with it in terms of the color line, if we don't deal with it in terms of how we come out of this slide into autocracy, then we're going to find ourselves sliding right back to the structures that we've always had, which eventually, inevitably, will bring us right back here. Until we deal with those fault lines, those racial fault lines, and the economic ones, but until we deal with those racial fault lines, we're always going to be walking on precarious ground, and we'll always be at the whim or at the edge of another slide into autocracy. So we've got to deal with it to get to the numbers to make change, but we've also got to deal with it to get to the type of change that we need that can ultimately be more sustainable.
Absolutely.
Well, Cliff, do you think there's and Cliff, do you think there's an openness right now for people to really, pull back the layers of this onion and deal with the core of what we're, of what you're identifying as the problem of really, beginning to deal substantively with the issue of race and the substantively with the issue of racism, and then substantively with those things that what I heard a lot of African American folks say was, You know, and this is a quote. This young brother was in the hotel where I was staying. He said, you know, I voted. I did my part. I voted the way I thought I should vote. And now we got this going on. I did my part. Talk to the people that didn't do their part and got us there. I mean, do you think there's a realization that they need to, on the larger part of society, they need to include these folks into this? They need to really reach out?
I think that there's a growing openness, right? We're not there yet, right? But I think that there's a growing openness. I think that there is amongst like the movement leadership, like the folks that are putting these rallies together. I believe, you know, certainly have that openness. But you know, when you talk about like, do I believe that all 7 million of the people that were at these rallies are open to that? Unfortunately, no, I can't say that, right? But I think that it's growing because what we know is this, right? When things get bad enough in this country, then that openness increases, right? Let us not forget that we got the first black president after what? After a major economic decline, right? After a housing crisis, after a recession, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, doggone it, maybe we need to let the black guy try, right? And so I think that you're seeing something similar now, that as we're dealing with all these issues, these political issues, these economic issues, these issues of like basic concepts, as we're watching the White House literally be destroyed, like literally, like bulldozers destroyed. As we're watching all of this, I think that there's a growing awareness amongst some of those folks, some of the 7 million, some of the folks that maybe even voted against Kamala because they weren't ready for a black woman, right? I think that there's a growing willingness to deal with some of these issues, but how permanent that is, right? How sustainable it is going to depend on the types of conversations that we're having, even as we're building this movement.
Yes, that is so important. And I really, Cliff, you are amazing. I know that you were on a very tight time strain, but I want you to, you know, before you have to leave us, and we're just so grateful we were able to get you on the show again. Can you say a call out to Virginia, to New Jersey, to all around the country where there are elections being held on November 4th? Can you do a shout out to black folks who, because we know that a whole lot of folks sat out 2024. They sat out. They did not go to the polls. They were at home, and they were not just black. They were white. They were all races. But we want to talk to these black folks. What do you want to say to them when they say my vote doesn't count? What do you want to say to them when they say, I don't know how to do it? The voting's so hard. What do you got to say to them in this moment, sir?
Yeah, I got to say, definitely your vote does count. Like this is the moment. All of these races, and there are some critical ones taking place. There's some critical statewide, like you said, Virginia and Pennsylvania Supreme Court. They're not as sexy as the presidential, but they're just as critical because that Supreme Court in Pennsylvania could wind up deciding the next presidential election, or could even wind up helping to decide if we even have another election. And so all of these races are critically important, and your vote makes a difference, right? Your one vote makes a difference. That's how come when we look at some of these races, they are razor thin margins. And so, we need folks to believe that your vote matters, that all of these races matter, even if you just vote because you want to send a message. Let's say that you don't know about the Supreme Court. You're not excited about the governor in Virginia, but maybe you're just mad about what you're seeing going on in the country. What you really want to do is send a message to Trump. Well, guess what? One way for you to send a message to him, besides coming to these rallies, is by using your vote and beating some of the people that he wants to see win, right? Keeping him from being able to consolidate his power in Pennsylvania or Virginia or wherever you are locally. Even winning these local elections, right, sends a message to him and to all of his little cronies that want to help him to become a dictator. So there's all these reasons why it's important for folks. But at the end of the day, whatever issue you are concerned about, that issue is on the ballot right now. If your issue is housing affordability, that issue is on the ballot. If your issue is abortion rights, it's on the ballot. If your issue is police violence, that issue is on whatever. If your issue is reparations, it's on the ballot, right? And so, if you're concerned about any one of these issues, then it's important that we make our voices heard in whatever way we can make them heard, state, local, federal, all of it.
Awesome.
And thank y'all so much, because I do have to run, but it's always a pleasure to join y'all.
Oh, it's wonderful. How do people get in touch with you? Because somebody's out there going, whoa. How do people get in touch with you?
They can connect with Black Voters Matter on our social media. It's Black Voters MTR, like Matter, Black Voters MTR on all platforms. That's Facebook, IG, TikTok, all the things. So go connect with us. You can send us a message. You can find out what we're up to, and you can get involved, because everybody's an organizer. Everybody has a role to play.
We love you, Cliff.
Black voters, you say matter. Black Voters Matter.
Matter.
Appreciate you, Cliff Albright. We're going to be in New Jersey yelling Black Voters Matter. We appreciate you, man.
Love y'all both. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Daryl, that was amazing. And people, I just hope that you're listening. Don't sit back and just talk to your friends. Don't just sit back and just, pound on and post on the social media. That's all important for sure. But we want you to consider how you make sure that your voice is heard. Make sure that you vote every time you can. Some people say, I'm going to every party I can see. Well, you need to do the same for voting. And in fact, one thing that we're about to do in Jersey is we're about to do a GOTV tour throughout the entire state of New Jersey. Yes, if you live in Camden, we coming. Yes, if you live in Atlantic City, we coming. Yes, if you're in Trenton, we're coming. If you're in Plainfield, come on, Daryl. If you're in East Orange, if you're in Patterson, if you're in Montclair, if you're in Irvington, if you're in Newark, if you're in Jersey City, we coming. Get ready. The bus is on its way. Daryl, tell them about what we're about to do about this John Lewis bus that's about to hit the streets of New Jersey.
Oh, yeah, Barbara. The John Lewis bus is all gassed up. It's ready to go and has the John Lewis image and about it's called our Hey Jersey Let's Vote tour, and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a Hey Jersey Let's Vote campaign, and we're going to be going into many of the the marginalized communities and communities that are not marginalized, encouraging Black and brown voters to get involved and to get involved in this election and be certain that they vote. It's going to be incredible because we're also going to do Souls to the Polls. So we're going to be going to several of the Black churches in New Jersey. We'll do service with them. We'll then be with them as they ride around to different churches and do a votercade to polling places where they'll be casting ballots following the church service. So that's going to be the Souls to the Polls that will be going on for 2 weekends. But Barbara, it doesn't stop there because we're also going to be hitting college campuses, right? So we're going to be over at Montclair. We're going to be over at Kane University. We're going to be at Rutgers, Newark, and Rutgers, New Brunswick. It's going to be quite the time for the John Lewis bus and our Freedom Riders. And we are fortunate, I think, Barbara, to have some Freedom Riders that may be on the phone. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. I mean, we got two of our amazing Freedom Riders. What we do, folks, is when we hit the streets, we don't just ride around. We do ride around. We do honk. We do make sure that nobody can be talking about how they don't know that there's an election. Right now, if you are wherever you are, if you have a friend in New Jersey, if you have a family member in New Jersey, an associate in New Jersey, will you please write them right this moment, call them as soon as you can and say, don't be sure to vote for the upcoming November 4th election. You can vote early. beginning on the 25th. That's why we're going to be there, because a lot of people don't know that there's an election. So please, please, all of you, become our voting rights champions who are listening from all around the country, all around the world, this show. Right now, call your friends, write your friends in Jersey and say, do that thing. Now let me bring up our first amazing Gen Z leader. Yes, young folks who help us get out there in those streets, get out there and sign wave, get out there and talk to the voters, get out there and help people to go vote, because we do rise to the polls, all of that with our amazing local partners. We have some incredible local partners, the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, etc. So let me bring up our first guest, and we call her Dee Dee. Her name is Destiny, and she is absolutely amazing. Destiny Jackson we met her years ago when she became one of our student trainees for TJC, but she was at the amazing college of Spelman. You know Spelman College, and she has just been a force. And we are beyond delighted that Destiny Jackson will be joining us. Hi, Dee Dee.
Hey, what's up, TJC family? How are you?
We're so glad you're on the show. Just thank you. You are so wonderful. Can't wait to see you in person in a few days. I'm so excited about you. Also, Cameron Barnes is with us, the Reverend Cameron Barnes. He is the youth political director for the Rainbow Push Coalition. That's right. He works side by side with Reverend Jessie Lewis Jackson Sr. all the time. He has been with us on so many of these activations. He's amazing. We're so glad you're here. Hi, Cameron.
Attorney Unwine, Attorney Jones, TJC, you know I love y'all more than anything.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Destiny. I mean, there's so many things that people could be doing right now, but you're going to get on the road with us for 10 to 12 days. And we say 10 to 12, folks, because we got to decide if we're going to be able to raise the funds to stay through the general election. But we've done it for the early voting, and we're happy. So you're going to be on the road with us for all that time. Why are you doing that when there's so many other things people say a young woman should be about? Why aren't you just getting your nails done, getting your hair done? Why aren't you just, partying and hanging out, trying to get more money? Tell us, why have you decided to ride through the state of New Jersey?
Yes, and I think anybody asking that question has lost their mind. With the current political state, that is just honestly a crazy question. But this bus tour is not just about politics. I think it's more about getting people out and to let them know that their voices do matter. And I think it's more than just being able, yes, we see things on social media and we see things, we hear things on the radio, whatsoever. But those face-to-face interactions, listening to people's stories and empowering them to take action in person means more than anything. I think the energy that TJC brings is definitely very powerful. Even from the last bus tour that we did, I thought it was very important. And someone said to me, they was like, why would they work so hard to stop us from voting if our votes weren't so powerful? And I think that's always going to be something that drives me, because it's like, yes, why would you, in fact, work so hard to stop something if it wasn't powerful? So this is definitely more than just a bus tour. It's a movement. It's empowerment. And, most of all, this is civic pride.
Wow. Woo-hoo. Same question to Cameron.
I wish I could say it as fast and as energetic as Dee Dee. My goodness. There is so much stuff going on, and especially, here in Chicago and what's going on. But getting on the road to deal with this right now lets people know that you've got to understand that it does not matter if you don't live in a certain state, in a certain city. The politics that happen, and we're not even talking about on a partisan level. I'm not talking about Democratic or Republican, but the fact of the matter is just simply the politics that happen somewhere else can and will, if not yet, affect you where you are. And for the statistics to show that 3 out of 5 people, 60% of people not even knowing that there's an election lets us know that there is work to be done. And if I'm energetic over here in Chicago and we've got some voter apathetic people in New Jersey, it makes all the sense in the world for us to be able to come out and let people know what's really at stake in this current political climate. I mean, we've got work to do for the next generations to come. This is not just for this election. It's not just for this year. We've got work to do for really the next 20 to 30 years to really secure the bedrock of our democracy. Look at what's going on across the nation. It would make no sense for us to sit by and be idle. So, of course I'm going, and it's TJC. You know how we do when the John Lewis bus is coming through. People remember that for years and years and years. So we're going to make a difference and to really continue the legacy of freedom rides that's been going on for more than 60 years anyhow.
And, you know, Dede, one of the things that we're going to be doing while we're in New Jersey is that, you know, we're not, you know, obviously, as you know, we don't just sit idly by and wait for things to happen. We make things happen. And so, you know, we're going to be going to these senior centers, and we're going to be going to colleges and universities and doing the wave, you know, the sign waving over expressways and stuff like that. When you think about, you know, your peer-to-peer interaction, when we go to Montclair University or Rutgers, Camden, or Rutgers Newark, or Kane University, when you think about, you know, the opportunity to have those peer-to-peer interactions, is there something that you want to say with regards to why people, you know, should be part of this? You don't have to be on the bus tour to do this, but if you're in New Jersey, these peer-to-peer interactions, is there something you want to say to them now, why they should get active in the movement while we're there, but why they should also get active on the movement to vote for the Gen Zs?
Yes, most definitely. I think that, one, I definitely want to let people know to not allow anyone to tell you that your voice doesn't matter, because it absolutely does. I believe that, I'm not going to lie, my generation, we're definitely the generation of change. And as a Spelman alum, my school's motto has always been to make a choice to change the world. So with that being said, I think that with, you know, all the freedom riders on the TJC bus tour, I think we're all definitely making an impact in the community. But it's our generation that is definitely has the power to make a difference. So yes, so don't ever let anyone silence you. And I hope that most of all that people walk away knowing that their vote is their power. And when we all use it, real change definitely makes is able to happen.
And I want everyone to know that if you're listening right now and you're saying, okay, I want more information. You said you're going to be in Atlantic City. You said you're going to be in New Brunswick. You said you're going to be in Trenton. You said you're going to be in all of these cities. When are you coming? How do I find out? You can write us. There are two ways. You can go to our website. We're creating and loading a whole page of information about this tour. So that will be up and running. We also invite you, if you're saying you're listening and you say, hey, I want to help, I want to be part of this tour, I got some people in my city who I hope you'll stop by and greet while we're there, write us at info at tjcoalition.org. And if you write us there, we'll get your message and we can respond. And we're just so grateful, so grateful. So, tell me, Destiny, you have been with us in Kentucky, Ohio. You've been with us, in these Georgia. You've done so much. Can you tell people, based on what you've done on getting out the vote, what has been the most important, impactful experience you've had working with voters to make sure that they're voting?
Oh, my God, I love this question because I literally was thinking about this probably like 15, 20 minutes ago. And
wow.
For me, the most impactful thing all of my experiences that I've had with TJC was honestly our last bus tour. Our last bus tour when we were in Kentucky, and I remember when we were out and we were just getting people, just empowering people to vote. And I remember that I was able to get someone who he was in his mid-60s, and he never voted ever,
wow,
ever, a day in his life. And I was able to influence him to register to vote, and he went to vote. And I was like, wow, someone who had the power to, who had the ability to use their voice and their power, but thought that it was not worth it, or that it was not powerful, and they went on believing that or had that mindset for over 40 years. And I was able to make that. I was able to make that change. So I think that was the most impactful thing for me with TJC, and I hope to be able to do the same on this bus tour in New Jersey.
Wow. Indira, a sister out of amazing, hardworking sister out of Pennsylvania, where they have the major election also on November 4th regarding the Supreme Court. She said that they were able to, Daryl and everyone, register 4 women who were over 90 years old and had never been registered. And this is new Pennsylvania Vote Project, and said that when people asked these 90-year-old women why had they not registered before, guess what their answer was, everyone? Their answer was, because nobody ever asked me to. Sometimes we assume, we make the wrong assumptions. We think people don't want to vote, but sometimes they don't know that they need to register, how to vote. Sometimes they just need a ride to the polls. Sometimes they need some help when they get to the polls. People, we need you. We need you engaged. Cameron, same question. What was for you has been the most impactful moment? Because you've been out there. Whoa, doing so much. Tell me.
I've spent so many hours with TJC, I couldn't imagine. And I know we're talking about voting, but the one thing that sticks out to me most, I know you remember this well, Barbara, Attorney Arnwine, I'm sorry, when we were in Houston, Texas, when we were going through, I believe, the CUNY homes, and where George Floyd grew up. We were taking banned books. Yes, we were registering people to vote and all of that was going on, but we were also handing out banned books, and there were people that told TJC that you all don't need to take books over to that housing complex. They don't want them. They don't read. And when we got over there, the influx of children, and I mean older people who were literally in tears, saying thank you so much, almost fighting in a friendly manner, of course, over who could take the book home and who could use that. I realized then how much of a real difference we were really making in the lives of marginalized people who have been written off by those that are in power, written off even sometimes by people that are not in power, but those who are in a different socio-economic status than they are. So what TJC has done is really shined a light on the issues that is not black, that's not white, that's not Democrat, that's not Republican, but just the everyday lives of average American citizens. And as you mentioned before, it's not that people don't want to, it's the fact that they just don't know what they have access to or don't have access to. That, to me, has been one of the most impactful things. I remember that to this day. I can picture it clearly in my mind this moment.
Wow. It's really interesting that Cameron would pick that moment.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, as he was laying that out, and I apologize, I cannot remember the TJC fellow's name who relayed the story to us, that she sat down with a little 5 or 6 year old child to read to the child in CUNY homes at the activation to which Cameron made reference. And as she was reading to the child was in amazement. Not at the end of the book as they got to the end, but the child was in amazement because all the pages were there. And it was just an incredible moment where you realize the impact that Gen Z can have on Gen Alpha. And this is the reason that we do these activations, so that you have that continuing influence that occurs from generation to generation, Barbara. I just had to throw that in.
Yes, and we're so excited, people. Again, we will start arriving into New Jersey, and those who are in New Jersey will join us on this Friday. Then Saturday, we begin the roll through New Jersey. We're so excited about all the places we're going to. Again, if you need more information and you want to follow us, and because we're going to be posting videos and reports on a daily while we're there, because we'll be there from beginning on the 25th through the end of early voting on November 2nd, and we're working to be there through the general election. If you want to know more, be sure to go to tjcoalition.org. The page is under construction. It will be up, and you'll have all the information that you need. If you want to donate, to make sure that we can stay there, if you want to donate to make sure that we can do the best possible while we're on the ground, be sure to go to tjcoalition.org and hit the donate button. There are so many ways, folks. Every one of us have a role to play. We have a moment to be in. Don't let anybody tell you your time has passed, your time hasn't come. It's now, it's now, it's now. Daryl Jones, take us home.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you to all our guests that have been with us today. Thank you to Black Voters Matter and Cliff Albright, as well as to Destiny and Cameron, who were with us on the show today. Folks, we tell you, and I'll tell you again, there's a time when you have to get off the sidewalks, get into the streets, and get into good trouble. Come on out to New Jersey if you're in New Jersey, and get in good trouble with us. If you're in Virginia, get in good trouble in Virginia. Wherever there's an election, get in good trouble, make it to a ballot box, and get that vote on. Until next Tuesday, noon, Eastern Standard Time, peace, everybody.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Urban One Incorporated, Radio One, or any of its subsidiary companies.
The preceding program was paid for by Barbara Arnwine.